Good. We're good. We'll go with it. And hello, everybody on Instagram. And we're just hitting the live button on all the other platforms. So wherever you are watching us from, and if you join us at any point, we are on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, and we're on YouTube, smashing it. So welcome. Thank you for joining Arush and I today. He has just notified me that I look like a referee. So I'm kind of preoccupied with that. And I was like, I thought I looked like one of those sweets called blackjacks, which if you're British, you'll know about. But we're also matching, which I think is quite cool, which we did by accident. But I think it looks cool. So we've got some comments coming through. Let's see who's here with us today. We have Jimmy, our wonderful friend Jim.
Nice. Hey.
Hello, Jim. And Helen. Hello, darling. Thanks so much for joining us. Okay, so hey, let's kick off because we've got an hour. So let's see if we can keep to time. And hello, people on Instagram who are also watching. So let's do an Oh my God, Jim started already. Look what he's saying. I look like a humbug. That's the other sweet. That's what it is. I thought I looked like a blackjack, and now you've just confirmed I look like a humbug. And Arush reckons I look like a referee. But you know what? It's all good. I like it. It's okay. So, all right, let's kick off. So what are we doing today? We're going to be talking to people about how to take your power back from your manager. So just to give you a little backstory, first of all, of why we're doing this, there was an article trending on LinkedIn quite a few weeks ago now. And when I say trending, I mean it had like hundreds of thousands of views compared to the next one down. And it was all about how to spot a toxic manager. And I just found the fact that it was trending really sort of pricked my ears up in the first place, because I was like, well, obviously the fact that something like that is so popular tells you about society and what people are focused on, and what sort of challenges they might be having in their work life. And then when I read that as well, and I spoke to Arush about it, we just found that it was a very disempowering article. And the general message of it was, look, here's how to spot a toxic manager. Here's the things to look for. Here's the questions to ask. And then basically run away. If you find one, run away. And we were like, well, is that really a functional way to live? Is that the most empowering way to live? Are you going to spend your life running away from people who are difficult? You know, and that's really what we want to discuss, because we reckon there are other ways to do things. And I just realized as I've gone rambling on straight away, I haven't done an introduction. So I'm going to introduce myself first quickly to anyone who doesn't know me. My name is Pinky Jangra. I'm a resilience trainer, coach, and a consultant. And I'm basically an explorer of life. I want to know why we're here. I want to know who we are, how all of this functions, how we can be our best selves. I'm into all sorts of personal development stuff. I teach, I train. I love it. And that's essentially me. So Arush, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Arush. It's hard for me to describe exactly what I do, but it's more on the lines of just living beyond what's possible and teaching people to get there, to be there, and how to live beyond what you think is possible. So that's pretty much what I do, how I live, how I like to be.
Yeah.
And what I like to get people to do for themselves as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Arush. Rita's joined us as well. Rita says hello. We're ignoring you on Instagram. I just can't watch everything. I have two eyes and they don't always point in opposite directions, although one does go a bit wonky sometimes. But all right, so let's get into it. I want to just say one thing first of all, Arush, which I think is really important. And I'm going to ask you first of all, actually, as well. If I say the word toxic, what image comes to your mind?
A snake spitting poison at someone. Right. And then you just losing your arm or your head or whatever, it just disintegrates.
Yeah. So people tell us, if you're watching, when I say to you toxic, what does that image sort of conjure up for you? Because it gives me that skull and crossbones thing, right? And the warning signs on like a label of radioactive waste or something. So toxic is a really, really powerful word. It's got a lot of energy to it, not good energy. And I think, we're very good these days at just using words and throwing them around. Oh, that person's toxic. Oh, be careful what you're saying. Because I think what I find is that actually a lot of people are dysfunctional, me included, because we're all humans and we have dysfunction, but we're always working, to resolve those, and not to resolve those, but to live beyond those. But essentially, just because someone has dysfunctions, which we're going to talk about today, what those look like, doesn't mean that you're toxic. And, it's like a while ago, people used the word narcissistic. That was the popular word. Oh, that person's narcissistic. Or do you even know what that means? Do you understand the difference between healthy narcissism versus personality disorders and what it all displays as? So I think, the first thing that really just came up for me as well is let's be careful about the word toxic, and don't just like throw that around too much. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that, Arush.
Well, the article that we're critiquing, actually, they talk about that. They define what it means to be toxic, and actually say that, don't just go around defining someone as toxic just because you don't like them and just because you don't gel with them, because there's a lot more to it.
Yeah, that's a good point. We've asked some of the people what they think toxic. Rita thinks of dirt, like dirty smoke. Helen says toxic for me is almost deathly, dangerous, poisonous. Exactly. And Jimmy with his jokes, toxic Britney Spears song. Thanks, Jimmy. But no, that's really interesting to just reflect on that and think about what it's conjuring up in your subconscious when you use language like that. Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's get into what we want to look at today then, really, which is our alternative approach, to sort of spotting a toxic person and then running away. Actually, we think there's another way that you can deal with that. So first of all, I want to just introduce, and Arush is going to lead us through this, a little bit more of an advanced understanding of relationships. It's very easy to say that person's toxic, that person's bad, that person's this, blah, 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 blah. But relationships don't work like that. Firstly, it's an energy dynamic of more than one person, you included, and you need to understand that. And you also need to understand the different types of relationship dynamics. And the one we're going to look at and focus on predominantly is this one, which is dominant-submissive relationships, which is the energy of this toxic relationship. So, Arish, do you want to talk a little bit about what that really means?
Yeah. So it's interesting because in this article, if they do anything well, is that they describe this dominant-submissive relationship, and although they only assume that that's the way it is and that's all there is, but I guess the best way to describe or to visualize a dominant-submissive relationship is by imagining someone as a circle. Say you're a circle, I'm a circle, and that circle represents your energy, who you are. And imagine that just taking over mine. So my circle is inside yours. If you want to draw that. Yep.
There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That helps. Because and just if you observe that image, you'll get everything that you need to know about dominant submissive from that. And basically what happens is that a dominant person tends to take over the will power of the other person, the submissive one. And the submissive one, because it's a two-way dynamic, they are someone who are just very capable, very easily, someone who very easily just gives up their will, their power to do anything about their lives. And a dominant person is someone who usually demands a lot, who takes a lot from the submissive one, and the submissive one is someone who just gives everything up and receives a little bit of energy in return. So for example, think of a typical top-down approach in any business. Your manager demands a lot from you. You've got deadlines, you work 8 to 10 hours a day, and in return you might get a salary bump at the end of the year. And that's what a lot of people work towards. A promotion, a bump up, and something like that. So there's not a very equal exchange of energy. There's not a very equal exchange of work even. And that definitely just massively affects both sides, actually.
Yeah.
So the submissive person tends to just be low on energy, be absolutely lost in their own lives, and their only purpose is their job and getting through the day, while the dominant one just enjoys life, I guess, a lot more than the submissive one.
And it's interesting what you're saying about like the hierarchy, because I think this is the way that I've experienced it in the workplace, is that because there is a hierarchy in place, it's not that the person who's dominant is necessarily very domineering as a person, but just the mere fact that they are a level or few levels above me puts them in a dominant state or status, if you like, and therefore I become the submissive. And it's interesting, like I was just thinking about examples of this in my own life, and because I'm very much what you just described, when I'm more naturally submissive, and or nurturally, should we say, because we learn that kind of role and that dynamic. But I've had lots of situations where, because someone is a manager and they're above me, and then they're telling me what to do, and they're piling work on me, and because I'm not like very submissive, I just take it. I people please, I can't say no, and I'm just taking on all the work, and I'll take more work and more work, and I keep saying yes, 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 I'll do everything. And then where that ends up leading me is I end up working myself to the bone, and I'm exhausted. And then the next thing that happens is I get resentful, and I resent the other person. I resent the manager. I resent the other people. I don't take responsibility. Now I do, because I know better. But in the past, I didn't understand what was going on. And then also, something else I noticed about myself that I found quite interesting is the other thing I do is that these are all coping mechanisms, right? They're not healthy functioning. But as you were saying, you've got this where there's a dominant outside of you and you're the submissive in the middle. I'll either wallow in the submission and get really miserable, really resentful, pleasing everybody, or I flip. I go into dominant and I try and take over. And that's my way of trying to get control of the situation. Again, it's unhealthy, because this whole thing is an unhealthy dynamic, which is what we're going to talk about, and what a healthy relationship dynamic actually looks like and how you forge that. But for me, I just play in this zone. I'm either submitting, or when it gets too much, my dominant side comes in, and I'm like, and then I say no from a angry place, or like just not a loving place or an empowered place, just from a really like, I need to get out, I need to do something. And that also doesn't really give you a very good result. So playing around in that dynamic, full stop, doesn't work, basically, is essentially what we need to be aware of. And there are some other relationship dynamics, because I know the article we were looking about toxicity was very much focused on the dominant and the submissive, but there are other types of relationships that we might want to be aware of. And do you want to share what those are?
Well, actually, I just had another example come to me about dominant
Sorry, go for
submissive,
it. Yeah.
and something which might be simpler to understand. It's like, especially when you're in sales, when you're selling something, a lot of the times what they teach you is you got to be dominant, and that's how you get the sale, which essentially means, and what a lot of sales techniques involve, is taking away the willpower of the person that you're selling to, so they can't say no. So basically, setting up an environment, setting up the structures, dealing with objections, and saying the right things, indicating them, just whatever you can, so that you get the sale. So that basically means you're taking away the willpower of that person to say no, and that's manipulating, that's dominating, that's where things can start to get toxic, actually, in those extremes, when you're just literally working towards taking the willpower away of that person.
Yeah. And you used a really key word there, manipulating. And when we function in these dynamics without realizing, we are all being manipulative. So even me as a submissive, that's my way of manipulating a situation. Because if I submit and I do everything I'm asked to do, and then no one's going to reject me, so I won't get hurt. And that's my real payoff. That's my psychological payoff.
Yeah.
And so everything even if you're dominating, you're trying to get control of a situation, because that's your psychological payoff. So all of this is you're really just manipulating other people, which is not healthy and not the only way. And like you say, one person gets energy, someone else giving too much energy. It's very out of balance. It's very unhealthy. It's not creative. It's not functional. And so should we have a quick look as well? I really like that example you gave as well of that one. And should we have a quick look at the other relationship dynamics that people might be coming across?
Yeah, so the other one, because there's two types. There's dysfunctional, so stuff that doesn't work ever, and there's functional stuff that always works. So under the dysfunctional, we've got the one dominant submissive that we've just spoken about, and the other one is codependence. So think of it as a bucket of crabs.
Sorry, no, you talk first. Okay. I'll do it quickly.
Yeah.
It's this one here.
Think of it as a bucket of crabs. One tries to get out, the other pulls it down. The other tries to get out, the previous one pulls it down. So it's like you're always just using your energy to bring the other person down in the whole dynamic. And a lot of this happens if we talk about the work environment with colleagues, it's like
Mm.
politics, office politics, trying to get over each other and in the best sort of view of the manager and stuff like that. So that's
Yeah.
one. And the other one
Yeah.
is aloofness. So basically, is when someone is just
That's that one.
afraid. Yeah, just
God.
someone's just afraid that the other person is going to steal away their energy. They're going to
Yeah.
steal away their whatever they've got going for them. So people who just stay aloof,
Yeah.
stay alert, stay away from everything, don't get involved in anything. Yeah,
Mm.
that's what they do. They
Yeah.
just don't participate.
And is it possible that you can play different roles with different people in different relationships? So you might have a dominant submissive with one person, and then you might be very codependent with another person, and then you might be very aloof with another person. Have you experienced anything like that?
Yeah, for sure. But also you can play all of them in with the same person as well. It just
Oh,
depends on, what's your main mode of operating.
yeah.
But
And
yeah, definitely all of them.
yeah, I'm even seeing it right now. As you say, you can do that in all situations. If I think about those scenarios in my life where it starts off dominant submissive, which is you got to do all this stuff, and I'm like, okay, I'll do it all, even if it kills me, I'll keep doing it because I don't want you to hate me and reject me and whatever. And I've got to please everyone. So it starts off dominant submissive. And then I might switch to dominant to try and get hold of it. But then when I get resentful, I get aloof. I draw back because now I'm like, I don't want to be around you. I don't want to get too close. I'm dissociating. And then the other thing is then that codependence does come in, especially like you're saying, where it's managers and promotions, and it's like you need that person to like you, to value you in order to get what you want out of it. And so then there's that little tug of war going on. And it's exactly right. I do all of that with the same person over and over again in many cases. So that's fascinating to realize.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Okay, wonderful. So these are dysfunctional relationship dynamics, which, everyone does them. It's just part of being human. But there's a functional relationship dynamic, which we want to introduce to you, which is really what we want to help to teach people to activate in their own lives, because this is where you become powerful. This is where you become a real creator of your own experience. And rather than running away from people who are toxic, actually, there's another way to do this. So do you want to talk a little bit about what the functional looks like? And I'll draw my picture and get it ready.
Yeah, but before we get into it, I just want to
Yeah.
set it up first.
Mm-hmm.
So, especially in relation to this article that we're covering, so the article assumes a lot of stuff, yeah, and they assume first of all that there's only dominant submissive and there's no other type. So you got to live life as if you're always going to be the submissive one and as if you're always going to be the manager. What it also assumes is that your job is your number one priority in life. You don't really have a purpose outside of that, and well, the other assumption is that you can't handle it. You can't handle toxicity. You can't handle someone being dominant. You can't stand up for yourself. You can't stand up for what you believe in, and that you must take it. So, it says if you're involved in that, then you just have to take it. And the best way to deal with that is, first of all, just spot if it's going to be like that. And if it is going to be like that, then you just start running away from there. And what that does is just reinforce the fact that you're submissive and that you're a runner, that you quit, that you run, that you hide, and
You
just
have no power.
constantly reinforcing that. Yeah, it doesn't help in any other area of your life as well. So
No.
definitely not a good thing to run.
No, and can I just add to that before we go into the functional? It's like
Mm-hmm.
that article had so many views. And
Yeah.
that's why we were like, we have to put something else out there, because it was very disempowering, and it's just perpetuating the cycle of powerlessness amongst so many people. Hundreds of thousands of people would have read that and taken that advice and gone, oh yeah, they might have found their dream job. We can talk more about this in a bit, right? But they might have found their dream job and they thought, oh, that person looks a bit toxic, that manager, so I'm not going to take it, I'm going to run away. You just gave up your dream because you took the advice that said just run away. It's like, oh, that's such a shame, because
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have to be that way. So let's get into that, unless you want to cover any more on closing that last
No,
piece off.
that's actually a very good point to start off with, because one of the first things that you'll recognize when you're functional with someone, with anyone, is that they're responsible for their life, their stuff, their purpose, and actually you're responsible for your life, your purpose, and your insecurities and your behavior. So let's imagine this, yeah. Let's say that I'm at a workplace, and actually I'll just give this as an example. Yeah, so I have a purpose. Yeah, there's a purpose beyond the job. So for example, I was in a part-time sales job, and one of the things that they tell you, because they know it's a pain in the ass to call 150 people every day and make cold calls, try to sell them something. Yeah. So they always told me, it's like, okay, here's your sort of board in front of your phone and in front of your screen. And what you got to do is you got to put up pictures of what the hell is it that you're going to do with all that money, once you've made it. And my thing at that time was, oh, in October, I got to travel. I got to go fly, travel with my friends, spend a week in an amazing place, and that requires money. So that's what I started doing, and that's the responsibility that I took on. I wasn't responsible for pleasing my manager. I wasn't responsible for making every single sale possible. All I was responsible for was somehow making that dream come true by making whatever sales were required or whatever was required. And thankfully, I have the tools. We have the tools to know what the next step is in relation to that target. So once I knew that for myself, there came a day where the purpose of the business is always for people to come in, for people to do their best and make the most money for them. Yeah. And if that was my purpose, I would be going into my job every single day and just getting it done. If I was the submissive person, if I was just getting in there. But because I had my own purpose, because I had something more important for me than the job, this one day, it was a Friday, I remember, I just had this massive inclination, just sort of something just slapping me in the head saying, don't go today, don't go today, don't go today. I'm like, fine. It's not that big a deal. I get a day off every month, once every month anyway. So let's just do it. So I dropped a message, hey, I'm not coming. Had a long weekend, had a nice weekend. And then I went in on Monday and I ran into my colleague on the door. And she said, oh, did you not come on Friday? I'm like, no. I'm like, did you not come on Friday? I'm like, no. Oh, interesting. Because at that time, everyone was going on their vacations and it was only us two that was supposed to come to the office. So no one showed up on Friday. And we walked in and the manager called us and he's like, I'm sorry, but no one showed up. No work got done and you cost us money. So you both are fired. I'm like, oh, shit. And I was like, what about my dream of, going, making enough money to go see my friends? Yeah. And then he brings up a paper in front of me to sign, and it says roughly 700 pounds. I'm like, what is that? It says, oh, because we fired you while still you having 2 months on your contract remaining, so we got to pay you. I'm like, perfect. Tickets were 200 pounds. Stay was 200 pounds. I had the rest to spend for myself.
Yeah.
So I signed it. I got the money. I went traveling, and my life just unfolded from there massively on a very different scale than that job. So, me just being aware of my insecurities, of, what I'm compelled to do as a submissive person. And then actually, what is it that I really want to do? And knowing that purpose just made me take the right choices, make the right decisions. So that is an example of functional, I would say.
Yeah. I have an example as well, and I just want to cover a few of the comments we've been getting, which I didn't see until now, so I'm going to bring them in. David, hello, darling. Toxic means subversive to me, slow microaggressions that pull apart the business quietly. That's interesting. It can be quite, slow microaggressions. It can be quite hard to spot when people are doing those little things to control and manipulate and alleviate their own issues, which is essentially what it is. Thank you, David. Nidhi joined us. Hello, Nidhi. She says, excellent point about the word toxic. Words carry weight. Exactly. We've got to be very careful of the language that we use. And Helen also has a comment here around the difference of responsible to and responsible for. Responsible to and responsible for. I think that's a bit cryptic for my brain right now.
Yeah, me too.
I'm trying to figure it out, but I know there's wisdom in there. My brain can't see it.
Yeah, I'm short-circuiting.
Thank you, though, Helen. Thank you so much. And keep your comments coming in. Really, really good to see what people are thinking and how they're engaging with what we're saying. And what do you think? Maybe you disagree. Tell us that as well. But just want to share again, like you said there, Arush, about what happens when you can actually act in a functional way. I had a very similar thing. And we are going to touch on this later about having a greater vision and the importance of that, because it helps you to move through dysfunctional relationships and situations, and it compels you to really achieve greater things rather than focusing on that issue. But I had a very similar thing where a few years back I wanted to go part-time because I had other dreams. I had other things I wanted to do and start pursuing, and I wanted to give them some time. But the submissive part of me was so scared that my bosses were going to be like, how dare you? No, you can't do it, and we need you here, and blah, blah, blah. And it was really scary for a minute. But my heart and my soul wanted so much. My truth was there. You've got to do this. You want this. You want to create this time so you can do what you love in other areas. And so I ended up doing it. I followed it. I didn't let that submissive part of me win. And I sat down. I did it very pragmatically. I worked it out and thought, okay, this is how it would work. This is how I'd get my work done in less hours and blah, 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 blah. And then I just presented it, and in such a pragmatic way, not like an emotionally driven way. It was just a very, I wasn't like scared. It was just like, look, this is the deal. And they went for it, and it was great. And it worked, and I got what I wanted. So that's the interesting thing. Often we take ourselves away from what we want by focusing on the wrong thing. Had I sat there and focused on, but I need them to love me, I need them to not hate me for doing something that they might not like, and carried on with that, then I wouldn't have done what I did. But I didn't. I switched my focus. That's not what I actually want to create in this environment. So let's Helen said it made sense in the moment. I'm sure it did, darling. So I just want to show the circles for a functional relationship. Do you want to talk a bit more about this? So this is the functional relationship. So the two circles side by side. So if you remember, I should really show the others next, but I'll do in a minute. And also it's really represented by the infinity symbol, a very powerful symbol. So this is a functional relationship with another human being and your manager, as an example, in the context of what we're looking at. Arush, do you want to talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, so essentially what these circles mean is that you're your individual self, and you're not being aloof or anything, and you're not being taken over. You're not sort of colliding your energies with someone. You're not dependent on anything other than yourself. And in a functional one, you're just in synergy and in alignment with what the other person has to offer in their lives, and so you go ahead with that. And to give you a very simple example, it's like a very, very simple example. It's like you meet someone at a bar, and you get into a conversation, and turns out you want to go travel to the same place, and one person has a car, and they offer you, and you go, and that's it. That's very functional. That's very easy. That's it just there's synergy, there's sharing of energy, there's movement forward towards the same goal. And the good thing is the extremes, because in the extreme of a dominant submissive, there's toxicity. In the extremes of a functional relationship, there's just more creativity, there's just more ambition, there's just more moving forward, there's more growth, there's more momentum, there's just more of everything. And it just expands. And you can see that very clearly, especially if you look at relationships in general, people who are in relationships just together, and who understand this concept, who understand that being functional is actually a great way to move forward. Those guys achieve amazing things in their lives, because it's like saying the whole is more than the sum of its parts. That's what you get in a functional relationship, where you're just bouncing ideas off each other, where you're just moving forward together, where it's like what we did for this thing. We just bounced ideas off each other. Like I had an idea, you gave me a better one, then we just sort of escalated from there and kept moving forward together with when we came up with this. So it's easy, it's functional, it's supportive, and you just move towards your purpose regardless.
That's it. And I think that's a really, really good example. So let's say if we'd been dysfunctional, So one of us might have dominated and said, no, we're going to do it like this. And the other one would have gone,
Hmm.
oh, okay. Even if it wasn't true for them or they had a better idea, they'd be too scared to say it. So that would have happened if we'd been dysfunctional. If we'd been aloof, if I would just back out. I'd be like, yeah, you do it. Okay, I'm not going to get too involved. And I'd just sit here and just press a few buttons and let you talk.
Oh yeah.
Or if we'd been, I know, I'm not going to lie. You all know me. I can talk a lot. He doesn't need to be here. I can just talk to myself for 5 hours. I much prefer talking to you. But if we were codependent, then I might have been like, oh, I need Arush's approval. I need him to like my ideas. It might be something like that that goes on. And again, that muddies the waters. It creates noise and messes the energy up, and it removes the clarity and the power of what we're doing and the creativity, which is important. Functional relationships where two people side by side just touching, but no overlap, none of that, no dominant submissive, just touching. That is the power that really allows us to create wonderful things
Hmm.
together in collaboration. And that's what work should be. When just because
Yeah.
someone's your boss, it doesn't mean you're not an equal as a human, as a creative being, as a talent, as a genius. And it's to really create that environment where you can work together collaboratively, no matter what level of hierarchy someone might be at. And that to me is, I think, a wonderful possible outcome in the future if we do the work, if we all do the work to learn this stuff that we're
Hmm.
talking about. So let's
Yeah.
talk about. Sorry, do you want to cover anything else,
Yeah,
or?
I was just getting something. It's like one other thing that I want to say about any dynamic is there's usually a power struggle in all of them. All the dysfunctional ones where um, in the dominant submissive one, the dominant wants all the power. In the codependent one, the power struggle is you're just at each other's throats and taking away power from each other. In the aloof one is you're protecting your power.
Mm,
And in the functional one, you're just allowing people to be in their power. You're just allowing people to do their thing, just allowing them to be, trusting them that they are powerful and that they can do whatever they want to do, and that they can handle their responsibility. A lot of the times in the workspace, what I've seen for myself is responsibility just being thrown at people all the time. It's
yeah.
like, okay, you do this is my stuff, you got to do it, and then you got to do this, and then I pass it on to someone else. It's like, you do this, and it's just it just goes around in circles and no work ever gets done.
And the other side of it, I find, when talking about responsibility and understanding that each person has power, is the micromanagement. Is you don't want to give them responsibility. You have to manage everything.
Mm.
You have to control it. And I guess that comes into the more the dominant submissive thing, which is actually the example I'm going to use with you when you coach me through this in a moment.
Right, nice.
But that's exactly it. It's a power struggle. And the first
Hmm.
step is always to be aware of what role you're playing in that. Should we go on to that now? Do you want to go on to doing?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, I'm
So
scared
how do you
now.
get from
I'm.
dysfunctional to functional? Yeah.
Arush is going to give me life coaching, and I'm feeling very
This
vulnerable.
is
But I'm
gonna
doing it
be
for you
interesting.
all. I'm doing it for
Yeah.
you. We've got a comment just before we go into the next stage. What's Jim saying? Jim is saying there are many who don't know what they truly want and give up their energy to pay the bills. Oh, so true.
Hmm.
They can fall into coping with toxic management as they have little insight. That's it. It's
Yeah,
knowledge,
that
it's
is such a good
wisdom,
comment. That
isn't
is such
it?
a good comment because I
Jim's a
know my
ledge.
friends, my friends on Instagram, on Facebook, everywhere. I know people who are working. They've given up. I know people who've given up on their dreams, so that they have some sort of respect in society, and that they have a job and they have a stable income and all of that stuff. And it's not to say that it's bad to do that, bad to do a job or anything, but we talk about dominant submissive, and submissiveness is all about giving up. Your willpower, and by willpower I mean your ability to make a choice for yourself, and just giving that up for someone else's choice, for someone
Yeah.
else's willpower. And that's what happens, especially culturally over here. That's what you do. You don't just work 10 hours, 11 hours a day for someone because it's your choice.
Mm. Exactly. And it's really interesting because we know that basically everything you experience in your childhood and your upbringing is what then plays out in the rest of your life. So I know exactly, like you're saying, from my culture, it's serving everyone else. That was what I was taught. You don't have dreams. You do what your higher ups tell you to do, your elders.
Yeah.
And so as soon as I go into the work environment, that's the dynamic I'm playing out. That's what I'm inviting in. That's what I'm perpetuating, and always have done for many, many years. And it's taken me a long time to get to this point where I'm now learning more about what role I was playing in that. But it's all your childhood patterns, as well. And I think it's always interesting to reflect on that. So if you're having an issue with a manager, how do you relate to your mum and dad? Can you ask yourself that question and have a little think about that? Or how did you as a child? Because, and this might sound a bit far out there, but I would suggest that you see your boss through the filter of how you saw your parents. And so,
especially an authority figure, whoever you saw as the authority in the family, because that's how
Exactly.
you relate to them.
Yeah. So whoever was the authority, you're right, Arush, because some people may not be parents, could be teachers, could be grandparents, could be anything. But it's exactly that. That's your definition of authority. And that's how you'll be playing out all these years later, because that's how the psyche works. But it does not have to be like that forever. So we're going to move into Arush helping me. We're going to use an older example, but I really hope that this gives everyone some tools and some understanding of a process that you can use. And our recommendation is not that you can do it in hindsight, helps you learn, but actually what's even more powerful is if you can learn to do this in the moment, right? So when you feel some tension coming up with your manager, when you feel like, oh, I've got that, I'm angry, I'm nervous, whatever it is, you'll know your feelings, you'll know when you're in that state. Hopefully you'll get a sense of it. And that's the point at which you stop, and then you do the process. And then you act after you've done the process, because you will get much more wisdom about a better way to act. So as soon as you feel the emotion, don't move on it, just stop, and then do what Arush is now going to take me through. I'm so nervous. Why am I so nervous? Okay. Okay. So step one is, I know you're having fun. I'm bearing all over the internet. Okay, so first of all, we're going to do self-awareness, which is conflict deconstruction. So we're going to take an example. So, okay, I'm now going to be quiet and be coachy, and you're going to ask me the questions and I'll answer.
Right. So before we get into this, so self-awareness, not being aware of your insecurities and not being aware of your issues and your unconscious behaviors and projections onto other people is what causes these dysfunctional dynamics. So if you feel powerless, you can be someone who reacts to it and pretends to be powerful and become dominant, or you can be someone who's very responsive and you accept, okay, I'm powerless, so I'm going to be submissive and I'm going to follow what the powerful person wants me to do. So your insecurities and especially not knowing them at face value can really lead to all of those dysfunctional dynamics. So this process that we're going to do right now is called the conflict deconstruction, because and we use conflict because conflict is the best tool you have for self-awareness, because that's when you basically catch yourself red-handed in that situation with all of your shit in your face, and that's where you can catch it and that's where you can move on from it. So
okay,
we're going to do this process just to see how what your thought process was, how you led yourself into being more submissive, how you led yourself into being in that situation that you found yourself in. And then we're going to do some processes on how you should have gotten out of it and how you can apply that now. So the first question for yourself is, what's the problem? Just to name the problem specifically, like what happened? What was it about?
So the problem was, I was working for someone on a project, and that person would ask me to do some things, do some work, and I would spend a lot of time doing it. And then that person would basically, what I did was just kind of disappear or just like get totally changed. And then that person would come back with something totally different. And that was it. No collaboration, no discussion, just do this. And then I do it. And then my work disappears, goes into nowhere. And then that person comes with something totally different, which also I didn't really understand. And so, yeah, that was the problem. But it didn't just happen once, it happened again and again and again and again. Does that make sense?
So in about 5 to 6 words, what is the problem? Because you got to be very specific with this. Yeah, you got to
you're
nail the
testing
problem
me
first.
now.
Yeah.
Okay, the problem is oh, mate. I knew I was getting into something when I said, Arush, why don't you coach me live? Now I'm like,
Oh, this is
okay.
fun for me. I'm gonna take
I
my time
know
with this.
you're loving it. Okay, so the problem is, okay, I'm stop second guessing myself. But the problem is that my work is not being valued and used.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. So the next question is, what were your thoughts about?
Well,
What are your thoughts about this? Yeah.
one of my thoughts about my work not being valued and used, my thoughts are, oh my God, that's so rude. Am I not good enough? I put so much time into this and it's just been ignored. It's really disrespectful. And my thoughts are like, what's the point then? What's the point of me spending so much time and energy doing my work if it's just going to be dismissed and hidden and thrown away? And my thoughts are that that's really rude. It's really rude and it's really disrespectful, and I don't like it.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So next question is, what feelings came up?
Feelings, frustration, anger, mostly frustration and anger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool. Right. So that's like the first layer of your unconscious mind. Yeah, it's like the basic stuff, the superficial stuff. Now we get deeper. So the next question is about definitions. So based on your thoughts and feelings and the problem, there's certain definitions that you assign to yourself, to other people, the world around you. And so my first question to you is, what definitions do you give to yourself in this situation?
I am useless. I am undervalued. I am not important. I'm an idiot. I don't deserve to succeed. I can't succeed. I'm not good enough. I'm not as good as other people. I'm not appreciated. I'm not appreciated. There's definitely an energy to that one. I'm not appreciated.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And the next one is, what definition would you give to others? And others in this case, in this situation that you've given is the person who, well, your manager. So what he is.
Others don't care about me. Others don't value me. Others are just bothered about themselves. Others think I'm stupid. Others think I'm worthless. Others think I don't deserve respect. Others can't be trusted. Others will hurt me. Others will harm me. Others will block my progress and my success.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Right. So the next question is definition of the world, and to explain that a bit further. So imagine that you're living in a place where you have all of these definitions about you being, useless and not valued and all of that stuff, and others being assholes and everything that you described. So what kind of a world is that? How would you define this world?
This world
The world
is
is.
the world is unfair. The world is competitive, unfair, harsh. The world is not supporting me. The world is a fight. The world is gonna beat me down. The world is gonna trod on me. The world is not a place that I can succeed, because there will always be people above me who are more powerful and will always succeed and get what they want. And I'm just a minion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually get the world is not a very nurturing place for you to
Oh,
grow.
yeah, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the world is not nurturing at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So the next question, and I think we should go through this, even though we thought we might not, but the underlying assumption.
Okay, sure. We can carry on with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the underlying assumption is basically, if the world is like this and you're like that, and other people, they behave in this way. So what are you making life about, in the sense that what is the assumption that you're basing life on? So if your life was a movie and all of these things are the elements of this movie, then how does life work? How does it work? What's the assumption that life works on?
The assumption that life works on is I am worthless and I'm not valuable. And no matter how hard I try, I will never be valuable. There's something else in there that I'm not sure I'm picking out. Are you
My
getting
question
it?
to you then, is, because see, there's a payoff. Yeah, there's a reason why you're not being valuable, why you're not acting valuable. So what would happen if you started acting valuable?
Oh, well, I can imagine the shock on people's faces, and that they might find that you're not allowed to do that. How dare you act valuable? How dare you assert yourself? How dare you know your worth? You're going to get trodden down even more now. You're going to get punished even more now. You're not allowed to be valuable. Know your place, and your place is down there, not up here. And so, yeah. So if I'm valuable, I'm gonna get hurt. I'm not gonna get accepted. I won't be accepted. I might be rejected.
Yeah, for sure. So if you're valuable, you're rejected, you're out. No one's going to accept you in the world, in the whole thing, right? So if this was true, if you being valuable and you just being, your real self, and you showing up as yourself and doing your thing, if that was causing rejection, then to compensate for that, how would you behave? How do you behave?
So if me being valuable causes rejection, I hide. I hide all the
Yeah.
time. I hide. I don't really put myself out there as much. I'm not very assertive. I don't really believe in myself and really bat for my own, team, if that makes any sense whatsoever. I don't think it does, but I don't have my own back. So if I'm going to get rejected by being valuable, it's like I play really small. I don't sell myself. I don't assert myself. I'm like, I'm just going to sit and hide over here where it's safe and you can all have the glory. And I will be resentful about that, by the way, and I'll be annoyed about it, but I'm not going to do anything about it because I'm too scared, because I'm going to get hurt if I go out and really smash it. So, yeah.
Yep. So in the real world, what is the inevitable end result of you hiding and you not showing your value and you not standing up for yourself?
Me not standing up for myself, showing my value, what's the end result? Inevitable end result of that is, well, I'm going to get taken advantage of, really. Or I'm going to fall into those dynamics more and more, where dominant people will naturally start to take advantage, because that's how it works. You sort of attract from an energetic perspective. And the end result of it is I don't live my truth. I don't live my dreams. I don't achieve as much as I could. I don't get fulfillment. So I just
You
stay.
get taken for a ride.
I get taken for a ride, yeah, all the time. Yeah.
Yep, that's the inevitable end result. And isn't that what happened in the problem?
Yeah.
That you were constantly being taken for a ride?
Yes. Again and again.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I
Nice.
just want to ask you,
I
so
need to
based on
write
what
that
we're
down.
talking about,
Yeah.
so based on what we're talking about, what have you understood? What have you learned about self-awareness, about your insecurities, and how they actually played a role in this dynamic? Because your action of hiding and your action of not standing up for yourself and your action of just not showing your value, that made you be submissive. Like, even if it was not your manager, but you just started acting submissive based on the assumption you have about life.
Which is not true. Like, my assumption there is, if I'm valuable and I value myself, people will reject me. And really, the right people won't. the right
Yeah,
people
so
appreciate.
as a conscious adult, you understand that that's not true, which is great.
Yeah, it's not
But
true.
that's the dynamic that you've been playing out. That's the pattern you've been
Yeah.
playing out, because that's probably what happened in your childhood. It's like
Oh,
you showed your
absolutely.
genius, you annoyed someone, and you you were told to shut up.
Yeah. And it's over and over again because there's been so many amazing things in my life that I've wanted to do and I've had dreams of things, and they've been shut down. I remember when I was 15, I was about 14, 15, I started learning to play drums. And I mean, I'm brown, I'm female, you know, doesn't quite fit the mold, and my parents are very traditional. And actually, my dad was like, okay, cool, got me a drum kit, paid for my lessons, all that was all good. But as soon as I started getting the idea of actually practicing and playing with other people and going to that next level, and I started having dreams of being a drummer on stage, and it was just shut down, shut down, shut down. And I knew I had a natural talent there. I used to just, the first time I sat on a drum kit, I could just play. And that dream was shut down, and that was when I was a little bit older. But again and again, it happened when I was a kid. It was any spark in you, any leap branching out, it was just like, no, you don't do that, you don't do that. Yeah, it's really very obvious now that is a very strong pattern, and I'm still doing it now in terms of my own work. I don't value myself. And therefore, yeah, I'll get taken for a ride. Other people won't value me as much. That's something for me to think about, definitely.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, it was really good. So I'm just checking on some comments. That was really good I hope people were taking note of the steps in that process. Jimmy says, before we move on to the next one, where is the power? Your power is in either in the end result or your identity. Exactly. So that's what we're going to go on to next, actually. Jimmy, have you been snooping on my notes and my agenda for today? Because actually, what is the end result is the next thing we want to talk about.
Yeah.
Because my power was in my identity, my beliefs, as we just said, my assumptions about value equals rejection. Therefore, stay small, stay submissive, allow the other people to dominate. That's my identity, that's my ego. But what we're going to talk about here, Arush?
Yeah, so here, because see, you can deconstruct your conflicts and you can know where your shit is, and that's great. It gives you great self-awareness, and it can stop you from doing things that you're not supposed to do. But then, that alone doesn't give you the direction of where you should go instead. So you can show up in the next situation being a victim, and you deciding, okay, I'm not going to act as a victim. I'm going to stand up for myself. But then what? You still don't know your purpose. Why are you still doing that job? So you might stop yourself once, twice, thrice, but then eventually, because you don't have a direction to go in, you're just going to be more comfortable falling back into that pattern rather than sticking to something else.
Absolutely.
So the next question that comes to this one is, what is your purpose? What is your vision? What do you want from life? And a bad way to answer that question is by just saying something that comes to you on the top of your head. That's really not the best way to go, because we have something called compensating tendencies, where anything and everything we want in life that comes to us from the top of our head, it comes as a compensation for the things that we don't want in our life.
Yep.
And so for example, people who want a lot of money, they just feel poor inside. People who the famous example we have is like, people who stand in front of the mirror, say, I'm beautiful, I'm beautiful, I'm beautiful. It's like they just don't feel beautiful inside. So you got to be aware of that. So a good way of doing that is making a list of everything that you don't want from life, and then assuming, okay, what if I had that? Make that assumption. If I had all of that, then what would I go for in life? And that's the question for you, I guess, as well. Moving on from the last example, the last thing. So if you had all of the value in the world, if you had, if you were accepted, if you were not being rejected anymore, if you had all the acceptance, all the value, everything, then what would you have loved in that moment? What would you have loved to get to have? What would your end result be
in that moment, in that scenario that we were talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah.
In that moment, in that scenario, what I would have loved most is to, and I don't want this to really jump ahead for the next process, but it's coming to me so clearly I've got to show it. But essentially, what I would have loved is to have a really authentic, open, honest conversation with that person and just be like, hey, dude, what's going on here? What are we doing here? What are we doing? Because this ain't working. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. And for me, what I would have loved and what is always a key value for me is relationships, nurturing relationships, healthy relationships, collaborative relationships, teamwork. I love that feeling of having a great team of people that you're working with and supporting. I love that. And so really in that moment, my highest vision would have been a really strong team working really well together, and then also really serving the client really, really well and doing great creative work for the client. That would be my highest vision in that moment.
Right, that's awesome. So if you had that vision, if you were connected to it, if you knew that that's what you were going for in life or in that job or in that, even in that situation, how would you have dealt with this manager? How would you have dealt with your work not being appreciated or just not even seeing the light of day?
How
But
would I have dealt with?
from that emotion of that end result of being a
Yeah,
great team and
yeah.
everything.
Yeah, I would have sat down. I would have just sat down with him straight away. The first time it happened, the first time that my work didn't come back in the form that I'd given it for checking, then I would have gone straight to that person with a big smile on my face and a loving, warm heart and said, "Hey, what's going on? Let's talk about it. Did I do something wrong? Do we need to change this? Do you need a hand with something? Where's your mind at?" And I would have had a really just a really good creative conversation about the work, not about me, not about that person, but the work, the task we were doing, the thing we were creating. And that's a really powerful thing to remember, is that all the previous stuff is about me, 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 me. But when you really got a clear vision and we just stepped into the end result of that, which is the team and the client and what I want to deliver and creating and serving and helping, when I'm in that state, my mind immediately goes to the end result of the work. So that's where my focus would have been. And there would be no pain in me about, oh, my work. It would have been like, oh, cool, right, let's have a chat. What's going on? And the focus would have been entirely about delivering the actual work. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, totally does. Yeah. Yeah, because it's such a cool thing that you said. It's like once you know that you have a purpose that is beyond you and beyond the person that you're fighting with, it just becomes easier to make a different decision than aggressively standing up for yourself or just submitting to what's going on. But then suddenly when you know that there's more important things to do, then you get a clearer path out of it as well.
You really
And when
do,
you're
don't you? And
yeah
I'm just, as I'm going through this with you, I'm just realizing how self-absorbed I was in that scenario, and 90% of the scenarios in my entire life so far. It's just like me, poor me. And I'm just realizing that. And that's what adds to the pain. It's so exhausting being so obsessed with your own self, and it's so boring, and it's so dysfunctional.
yeah, and it's
So
not
that's
very
really
creative. You
interesting.
don't get stuff
You
done.
don't create anything, no, because exactly
Yeah.
like Jim was saying, we'll just share that Jim's comment is, where's the power? It's either in your identity or your end result. And when it's in your identity, all you're doing is thinking about yourself. You're not creating anything new. And Jim is also saying it's about what you're creating. It's about the work, not me. Great. Is that a nod to my comment? Thank you, Jimmy. Every now and then a little bit of wisdom comes out. And thank you so much, Jims. Yeah, that's exactly it. Wonderful. So let's do you want to do this one now?
Oh
Or I
yeah.
know
So this
yeah,
tool, I love this tool. Yeah, because
it's
I
a really
use it
great
all
tool.
the time. It's
Yeah.
fast, it's efficient, and it helps in the moment of the trouble, like when you're
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
freaking thing of the whole panic and the whole anxiety and the whole
Yeah.
emotional sort of rush.
I just want to share
Yeah.
something that, sorry, I meant to share a minute ago, but I just want to quickly, it's that whole thing you said that was really important about the vision. And we're talking about how it's not about you and whatever, but it's not a negative vision. So a negative vision for someone who's having an issue with their manager would be, I have a vision of having a really nice manager. I have a vision of, getting away from this manager. That's not a vision. That's a negative vision. That's not a true, powerful, creative vision. So it just came out to me that was,
Yeah, and it's
I
still
think a
about
lot of
you.
people. Is it still about you?
Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And yes, so I'm very sorry because I just cut your flow off. I should have just kept quiet.
That's good.
But so yes, conflict with integrity, a process that you want to do in the moment, ideally.
Yeah.
When you're feeling that thing coming up and you want to stop and do this. Okay.
Yeah, and if you've missed the moment, that's fine. You can just do the conflict deconstruction that we did earlier, just to see what happened, and the next time you go in more prepared. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this one, this is my favorite because this is the one I use the most, especially when there's emotional turmoil just going on inside, and I have no freaking idea what to do and how to behave, and still don't want to screw things up. So if you want to do this on the same problem, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It'll show how quick it is, and how you
Yep.
can use it for any situation in your life.
Yep.
So the first question is, what is the charge? And by that, what I mean is, say if you were to file a complaint in a police station about someone, what would that be? It's like, this person
is ignoring my work and all my hard work, and I don't like that.
Great, awesome. So emotion, what's the emotion behind it?
Oh, I'm angry. I'm angry and I'm
Yeah, yeah.
frustrated. A little bit of sadness under there as well, but the
Mm-hmm.
overpowering anger and frustration.
Cool. And how are you compelled to behave from that
Oh,
emotion of anger? What
see,
does it compel you to do?
it compels me to do one of two things. One is to actually lash out, and but I'm quite passive aggressive when I go into that state. So I'm more of or I'll make a little bit of a comment, but it won't be in a good tone. It would just be like a sarky comment or something, or I retreat.
Mm-hmm.
And because depending on the environment, obviously you can't, you might not want to behave in a certain way in certain situation, but your other option then for me is I just retreat, but then I'll go and moan about it later in my head, and I'll talk about it and I'll overthink it, and I might, I'll tell my friends, oh, this happened, and but those would be my two things. So the anger and
Yeah.
frustration would either make me go away and collude with other people about my problem but not actually do anything about the problem, or try and do something. But again, I go into the dominant circle, so let me be a little bit more aggressive about it, which is still dysfunction.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my other option.
Yeah. So the next question is, what would the end result be of you being aggressive? And what would the end result be of you being passive and just hiding?
Yeah. So if I was aggressive, I would damage the relationship. I would then feel guilty and ashamed of myself, and then I'd feel horrible for being, rude to someone else if that's how it ended up happening. And so I would have damaged the relationship essentially, and then made things more uncomfortable for me and now someone else as well. Had I been passive and run away, I would never have resolved anything, and I would have just festered in my own resentment for longer and
Mm-hmm.
longer. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So the next step, and this whole thing, it's about the best way to deal with conflict really is, instead of being a participant in the conflict, you become the observer. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
by naming these things, you're becoming an observer of the conflict, and you're not being directly involved in it. So it sort of detaches you from the emotion by naming it. But to take it a next sort of step further,
Mm-hmm.
what I want you to do is just imaginatively imagine all of these things around you. Yeah, just imagine the conflict around you, imagine the emotions, imagine the end results, just around you, somewhere, anywhere in space.
Yeah.
And what I want you to do is, if it you can do it in any way that works for you, but for the purposes of today,
Mm-hmm.
imagine yourself rising above these things,
Mm-hmm.
and leaving
Mm-hmm.
them below, and just keep rising. Imagine yourself rising up into space, and these tiny little problems being on Earth somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want you to do is just observe
Mm-hmm.
the problem from that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if it was down there,
Mm-hmm.
and just ask yourself, from this perspective, what's obvious, like what should have I done?
There's a few things about the situation that become obvious to me, which is that actually the two people involved, me and the other, are not even really, we're both turned in our own little worlds. So I'm in my own little world, which is, this person doesn't value my work and I'm going to be angry about it. and that person is in their own little world, which is actually really more about insecurity of not doing a good job or having the right answers on the work or whatever it is, and needing to control it and needing to understand it. So that person's in their own little world over there, and I'm in my own little world over there. And we're both in our own little worlds and our stories, and we're making our own stories up about the situation. So there's actually a complete disconnect between us, because we're both sitting focused on our own identities, our own egos, on our own tension that needs satisfying in the whatever way we want to try and satisfy it. Which for me is to either get angry or run away or whatever, and for that person is to what they were actually doing with the work is really just trying to make themselves feel like the work is right and that they understand it. And so that becomes obvious to me. And so the question that you say is, well, what's really the action? Is for me to go closer, to bridge those two people, to go closer to the other person and say, hang on, because we're both in our own little worlds right now, making up stories about this conflict. Let me actually go and create that functional where I move my circle closer to that person. I don't go into their circle. I don't try and go around and swamp their circle. I just come in a functional relationship where I'm touching, and they're their own person. I'm my own person. And I actually extend out the olive branch, not the olive branch, but the conversation, and say what's going on here. And what's obvious to me as I talk about that, and I'm sorry if I'm going ahead on the questions, Arush, but I know you'll like work it out anyway. But the what's obvious to me about that is that by letting go of my own stories and my own identity and my own fears and worrying about myself, I've now bridged a relationship rather than having a separation. So we've now got a closer relationship immediately, which is fantastic. And also, I'm seeing the humanity in that person. I'm seeing the human. I'm not seeing the stories I'm making up about him, me, whatever, whatever. I'm seeing the person. And actually, that person is very grateful to be seen by me. That person is very grateful that I'm actually opening up and saying, hey, what's going on? Let's have a talk about it as a human to a human. And that person is actually very grateful to actually have the opportunity to be open and honest about what they're experiencing. And from there, that would be the right thing to do, is actually to move myself closer to that person and to actually sit together and talk it through. And it's not personal, do you know what I mean? It's structural, as we know, but it's just about looking at that.
Yeah, but I want you to observe something here. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want you to observe how, when you took responsibility, the dynamic changed. Doesn't matter what the other person was doing.
Yeah.
When you're like, okay, I'm gonna, bring my circle closer. I'm gonna do this. Suddenly the dynamic changed, and that's what I was saying before. It just takes one person to change the dynamic. It just takes one person.
You just got something for me big there, Arush. I didn't even realize it as I was getting that clarity. I made the choice. I'm going to make the step forward in the right direction to be functional. And you're right. That person didn't have to do anything. It was me that then opened up a whole new flourishing of experience through my action. I don't need that person to change. I don't need that person to come to me. I'm the one who, oh, this is so big. This is so big. I'm so glad I asked you to coach me. This is so good. That's very powerful.
That's cool, but I think I've been kicked out of the Instagram live somehow.
Oh, mate. I think we still got people watching. Are you kicked out or?
I'm not sure.
Sorry, people. Look, if it doesn't work, I'll just have to. I don't know what's going on.
It's fine. I think they've got most of that anyways.
Did we finish that process?
Yeah. Wait,
I'm just adding you again to the Instagram if it works. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was big. That was really powerful. I made the move when I'm in my higher state and I'm functioning from higher consciousness, and I come out of these little dynamics and I see from above. The truth for me is to make the move. And not only does that help me, it helps someone else. And not only helping, do you know what I mean? I mean, like, we're all going to grow when I do that. We're all going to benefit. And I don't do it because I have to help. Do you know what I mean? I don't because, I need, it's actually, it's just a truly higher level of consciousness and functioning. And when you do it from there, everybody wins. And that came so clearly to me.
It's true, because I also want to show you that you made the move to be functional, but earlier in the example, you also made the move to be dysfunctional, by hiding, by playing it small, by,
Yeah.
undervaluing yourself. So you made the move back then as well, but you made a different move now that made everything functional. So it really is all about how you behave and how you act and where you're coming from. What is your intention? Are you intending to repeat the dynamic that you've been living out so far by reacting and by just going with the story that you've always known? Or are you choosing something else and going with that and creating a new dynamic that you've never experienced before?
Absolutely. And that's the interesting thing, is that you always have a choice. And that's where the self-awareness is so important, right? That we were talking about as well, because you got to watch yourself. But when you realize that you have a choice to do something differently, even if you've been doing something the other way for 37 years, 40 years, whatever, however old people are, you can totally switch it up. You can totally switch it up. And that's so empowering. And that's what this was about for us, right? Is like, there's so much better way of doing this. Because like we said, one of my responses is to run away, as the article was telling people to do. Run away from people who are dominant. Run away from... No, look what happened and what could happen, and I know would happen in reality. Is it was so clear to me intuitively. Look what would happen when I lean into it rather than running away from it. And I lean into it from a very healthy place. Now something new flourishes and something new is created for all of us, for me and that person and the work. Something new will come out of that. That's really, really awesome. I'm just going to check a comment that we've got here. Jimmy says, rise above it. My mother said that, but you explained that properly. Yeah. Do you know, I have to say, actually, Arush, I'm going to watch this back and just get the way you explain that and talk through the rising above and imagining all this stuff around. Just really, really works. I love it. It's really, really, really like got me to go there very easily. Awesome. So let's just talk about this now. Learn, apply, learn, apply, learn, apply. We've got, by the way, also we've got some little claps coming through on the Instagram. I'm sorry, I've been so focused on the other comments and on the other platform. I'm really sorry. I have been paying attention to you at the corner of my eye. I just want to say thank you for watching and thank you for all your claps and things, and really hope that this is helping you and giving you some things to think about and things that you can use. And thank you to everyone on the other platforms as well who's also watching and commenting. So any other comments that you guys have? Any other questions? What's landed for you? What are you learning from what we're sharing? Is there anything in particular? Put that in the comments, because that helps you concretize your own learning as well. And it really reinforces in your mind what you're picking up from what we're sharing. So Arush, let's go on to learn, apply. And what was this all about? Why did we put this in here?
So this I put it in here because you can get all of these tools and you can start applying them and stuff, but also what can come as a side effect is that you become too harsh with yourself. It's like, oh, I know myself, why did I do this? I know this now, why did I get into this? So it is to understand that yes, you can instantly change a decision for yourself at any time, but sometimes it just takes time to get there. Sometimes you fall, sometimes you fail, sometimes you recognize what you did a week after you've done it. Sometimes it takes time to get closer to it. So a lot of the times a fall can actually be a next step in improving and not just a step backwards, actually. So it's very important for you to allow yourself to experiment, to try to move forward at your own pace and see what happens, experience it, and then just learn, apply, readjust, and then learn again and move forward.
And that's really important, right? Because this isn't easy. I don't even want to say that, because that's putting a rule on something and a concept that isn't necessarily true. It can actually be very easy. But what I mean is that this is a whole different way of functioning, right? And if you've spent 37, 38, 40, 50, 60 years living in a certain way, there's going to be a little bit of a jar. You've got to put some effort into it. And yes, we don't suddenly win everything all at once and it all shifts. It's a continual process of growth and evolution. And it's really important not to beat yourself up, because that's just low consciousness as well, right? And I know, because I do it all the time. But it's really about giving yourself, this is an opportunity to change the way you relate to other people. And yes, it's about difficult managers at work, because that's the thing that I think a lot of people have problems with. And rather than just projecting it onto them and saying, oh, this person's difficult and it's their fault and I'm going to run away, look, there's a whole nother way you could do this that would benefit yourself and everyone else and the work and your clients and everything, if you really went for this. But it's okay to try it a bit, fail. Okay, well, I tried it didn't work, why not? Just allow yourself to keep going, and before you know it, you will really build your own confidence in that respect, and your own ability. I hope I'm still on, because I'm getting a message about my Wi-Fi not being great. So
No, you're on. I can. Yeah.
hold the intention. Wi-Fi is going to stay on until we finish, which is nearly there. We have overrun, but I knew we would overrun, because always overrun, and I don't care, because I just love talking to you and it's so fun. So we've got some comments on the Instagram. Vanessa says, hey, yes, I love it, thank you so much. Sonali says it's going great, thank you, we really appreciate you. So I guess then we can come to our close, Arush, and I'll just ask any other comments from the Facebookers and the LinkedIners and the YouTubers and all of that business. What was a key takeaway? Is there a key takeaway you got from today? And anything else you want to share? And hopefully you will go away and practice this. And again, we're talking about it in manager relationships, but it is all relationships, really. And so there could be, and every opportunity that you are faced with another human being is an opportunity to have a functional interaction. So you could use it for anything. Jimmy's comment is, enjoyed that. Thank you, Jimmy. We enjoyed your comments and your input, and it's always so lovely to have you join us. And to close, I guess then, any other comments from you, Arush?
Yeah, I like to give some comments at the end always. But today has been a learning for me as well. Yeah, it's like it's just a reinforcement that it's our choice. It's whatever I'm experiencing with someone, or whatever I want to experience with someone. It's a choice. It's a choice that I got to make. It's the path that I got to take. And what I also think, or what I also realize is, and why we say, allow yourself to fail, is because we're addicted to acting a certain way. We're addicted to acting how we've always acted. So treat it like a drug addiction. Treat it like the chemicals in your brain that constantly tell you to act a certain way. It's going to take some time to change and get out of and build some new pathways that lead you to doing better stuff. And also, if you have any other articles like this which just sort of push you in the wrong direction, or they just annoy you a little bit, or you're not sure about them, what they say, but they seem to get a lot of attention, then point them to us, and I would happily take a look and break them down, and we do another live then.
I love how you said that so diplomatically. I would happily take a look and break them down, and I know what you mean by that. But look, we're critiquing things from a good place, right? Because that's we got to grow. There's better ways. And at the end of the day, I just totally disagree with everything the article said, but not everything. But that whole tone of running away from difficult relationships, it's a really unhelpful message. So that's what we're doing, right? We're like, look, there's so many other ways we can live in functional ways.
Also, we completely forgot we do have an article in response. So everything that we spoke about today, we've actually got it written down on a file, and that's something that we're going to post as well. So it's not just that you have the video, but if you just want to go through it, we've got everything written down as well.
Yes, definitely. We will have a look at how to do that. And I think we will close there and just say thank you, everybody. And I'm sure we will, look at doing another live on some other topics. I did see one the other day, and I can't remember what it but I think it was about like forcing yourself to do things that you don't want to do, how to get yourself to do something that you don't really want to do. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting one, right? So especially when you're coming from the types of work that Arush and I are doing, it's a whole nother level of function, right? A whole nother level of conscious awareness and how you live your life. And it's so much more empowering. So yeah, we may look at that one. Good. All right. We're going to go now. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
And see you again soon.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
See you. Bye-bye.